On my return to Paris, I began frequenting a cafe by Les Halles, La Promenade de Venus, where once a week Andre Breton would meet with his surrealist group. I allowed myself to offer him this wait tarot. Expecting his approval while hiding my pride, the poet examined the cards of the arcana, attentively with a smile that gradually transformed into a grimace of disgust. This is a ridiculous deck of cards. Its symbols are lamentably obvious. There is nothing profound in it. The sole valid tarot is that of Marseille. Its cards are intriguing and moving, but they never surrender their intrinsic secret. One of them inspired me to write Arcanum 17. An ardent admirer of this great surrealist, I threw my card collection into the trash, keeping only the Marseille Tarot, or more specifically the version published by Paul Marteau in 1930. But if, like Breton, I grasped very little of the meaning of these cards, which, next to Waite's seductive images, seemed hostile, especially all those of the minor arcana, I decided to engrave them in my memory, hoping thereby that whatever my intellect was capable of deciphering would be understood by my unconscious. I began memorizing every symbol, every gesture, every line, and every color. Little by little, aided by my stubborn patience, I managed to visualize, although imperfectly, the 78 arcana with my eyes closed. During the 2 years this experiment lasted, I went every morning to the National Library of Paris to study the tarot collections donated by Paul Marteau and the books devoted to the subject. Until the 18th century, the tarot had been incorporated into a game of chance, and its profound meaning went by unnoticed. Its drawings had been mutilated or changed, decorated with portraits of nobles, using the deck to reflect the pomp and ceremony of the royal court. Each line said something different, often contradicting the others. In reality, instead of speaking objectively about the tarot, authors turned it into their self-portrait, interwoven with superstitions. I found Masonic, Taoist, Buddhist, Christian, astrological, alchemical, tantric, and Sufi beliefs, and so on. Following this publication of the first esoteric treatise on the tarot and monde primitif, occultists began raving in earnest, neglecting to give any deeper examination to the drawings of the tarot of Marseille, believing Court de Geblin's copy and his Egyptian explanations to be the authentic esoteric truth. In 1783, a then fashionable seer, the barber Aliette, under the pseudonym of Itala, 1750 through 1810, created a fanciful tarot with links to astrology and the Hebrew Kabbalah. Then, Alphonse Louis Constant, alias Eliphas Levi, 1816 to 1875, despite his vast intuition, turned his nose up at the tarot of Marseille, which he deemed exoterica, and in the transcendental magic, its doctrine and its ritual, drew esoteric versions of the chariot, the wheel of fortune, and the devil. He established that the 22 major arcana were illustrations of the Hebrew alphabet and discarded the 56 minor arcana. This idea was adopted by Gerard and Crasset, who under the pseudonym of Papus 1865 through 1917 created a tarot with Egyptian figures illustrating a Hebraic Kabbalistic structure. Following these attempts to graft all the sorts of esoteric systems onto the tarot, thousands of books based on a non-existent tradition were written seeking to prove that the tarot was the creation of the Egyptians, the Chaldeans, the Hebrews, the Arabs, the Hindus, the Greeks, the Chinese, the Maya, and extraterrestrials. Some even mentioned Atlantis and Adam, to whom was attributed the sketching of the first cards under the instructions of an angel. For religious tradition, sacred works are always of heavenly origin. The realization of the symbolic system was not left up to the personal inspiration of the artist, but granted by God himself. The word tarot would be Egyptian tar, way, ro, rog, royal, the royal way. Indo-Tartar, Tantara, zodiac. Hebrew, Torah, law. Latin, rota, wheel. Orat, speak. Sanskrit, tat, the whole. Tar-o, fixed star. Chinese, Tao, the indefinable, principle, and so forth. Various ethnic groups, religions, and secret societies have claimed to be its father. Gypsies, Jews, Masons, Rosicrucians, alchemists, artists, Dali, gurus, Osho, and so on. In it can be found influences from the Hebrew scriptures, the Gospels, and Revelation. In cards like the World, the Hangman, Temperance, the Devil, the Pope, and Judgment, teachings from Tantra and the I Ching, the Aztec codices, Greco-Latin mythology. Each new deck of cards contains the subjectivity of its authors, their vision of the world, their moral prejudices, their limited level of awarenesses. As in the story of Cinderella, in which each of her half-sisters is prepared to cut off one end of her foot so she can wear the glass slipper. Every occultist alters the original structure. To make the tarot conform to the 22 paths of the Tree of Life that join the 10 Sephirot of Kabbalistic tradition, A.E. Waite exchanged the number 8 of justice for the number 11 of strength, transformed the lover into the lovers, and so forth, thereby falsifying the meaning of all the arcana. Aleister Crowley, an occultist belonging to the Order of the Temple of the Orient, the OTO, also changed the numbers and the drawings, and thus the meaning, as well as the order of the cards. Justice became adjustment, temperance, art, and judgment. A. Young. He eliminated the knights and the pages and replaced them with princes and princesses. Oswald Wirth, a Swiss occultist, Freemason, and member of the Theosophical Society, drew his own tarot, into which he introduced not only medieval costumes, Egyptian sphinxes, Arab numbers, and Hebrew letters in the place of the Roman numerals. Taoist symbols in the alchemical version of the devil invented by Eliphas Levi, but also drew inspiration from the clumsy version of Court de Gebelin. See his tower, his temperance, his justice, his pope, his lover, appearing to assert that the tarot of Marseille was a folk, or in other words, common version of Gebelin's tarot. The thousands of adepts of an American Rosicrucian sect declared that the Egyptian tarot of R. Falconer, a shareholding member of the Comédie Française, who drew and published it in 1896, dedicating it to Alexandre Dumas the Younger, was an original sacred deck. 3 centuries of dreams and mystification. A sacred work is by essence perfect. The disciple should adopt it in its entirety without attempting to add or subtract anything whatsoever. No one knows who created the tarot, nor where, nor how. No one knows what the word tarot means, or to what language it belongs. Nor does anyone know if tarot was like it is from the beginning, or if it is in the end result of a slow evolution that would have begun with the creation of an Arab card game called Naibe, meaning cards, to which the major arcana and those whimsically called the honors or court cards were added over the course of years, simply creating new versions of the Tarot of Marseille, anonymous like all sacred monuments. By imagining it is enough to change the drawings or the names of the cards to achieve a great work is pure vanity. What was the intention of the creator of this nomadic cathedral? Was one lone human being capable of giving shape to such a great encyclopedia of symbols? Who is capable of amassing such knowledge in a single lifetime? The tarot is crafted with such great precision. Its internal relations and geometrical unity are so perfect that it seems impossible to believe that this work was achieved by a solitary initiate. Merely the invention of the structure, the creation of the personages with their dress and their gestures, and the establishment of the abstract symbology of the minor arcana requires a great many years of intense labor. The short span of a single human lifetime would not be enough. Eliphas Levi, in his Transcendental Magic, if we read between the lines, expresses this insight. In quotes, it is, in fact, a monumental and singular work, strong and simple as the architecture of the pyramids, and consequently enduring like those, a book that is the sum of all the sciences, that can resolve every problem by its infinite combinations, that speaks by evoking thought, is the inspirer and regulator of all possible conceptions, the masterpiece, perhaps, of the human mind, assuredly one of the finest things bequeathed to us by antiquity, a universal key. It is truly philosophical machine that keeps the mind from straying while leaving its initiate in liberty. It is mathematics applied to the absolute, the alliance of the positive and the ideal, a lottery of thoughts as exact as numbers. It is finally perhaps the simplest and grandest conception of human genius. To imagine the tarot's origin, card games had already been banned in the statuettes of Saint Victor of Marseille, abbey for those pursuing a religious vocation, in 1337. We need to go back at least to the year 1000. During this area in the south of France and in Spain, it was possible to see a church, a synagogue, and a mosque cohabitating in healthy conditions of peace and in close proximity to one another. The three religions respected each other, and the wise men of each had no hesitation about discussing things with their counterparts and learning from contact with one another. The Christian influence is obvious in Arcana 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 9 and 10 and 11. The four Hebrew letters Yod, He, Vav, He, which designate the deity, can be distinguished in the head of the skeleton of the nameless arcana, and the 10 Sephirot of the Kabbalistic tree of life can be seen on the hangman's chest. Muslim symbols appear in the minor arcana. For example, on the top of the Ace of Cups, there is a circle with 9 points that by all evidence represents the initiatory enneagram. It is possible that a group consisting of sages from 3 faiths, foreseeing the decay of the religions, which out of a thirst for power would inevitably stir up hatred between the sects, and the forgetting of the sacred tradition, worked together to deposit this knowledge in a humble card game, which amounted to preserving and concealing it so that it could travel through the darkness of history until it reached a remote future where individuals of a higher level of consciousness would decipher its wonderful message.